Hey everyone, Chris Carter here on the North Shore Drive podcast from the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. Today we're joined by Ray Fittipaldo. We're going to talk about whether or not the Steelers need to be worried on defense about problems from that Eagles loss leading over to this Ravens game that could win the AFC North for the team. That, injury updates, and why the NFL may need to change some things about how they handle replay assist in the booth. It's all that here and more in the North Shore Drive podcast. Let's get into it. You are now listening to the North Shore Drive podcast, a show on all things Pittsburgh sports from the writers of the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, hosted by Christopher Carter. Hello, welcome to the North Shore Drive podcast from the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. I'm your host, Chris Carter, joined today by one of our great Steelers beat writers, Ray Fittipaldo. And as always, you can find this show on your favorite podcasting apps and on YouTube. Like this video if you enjoyed. Subscribe to this YouTube channel to get all of our Monday, Wednesday, Friday episodes of the North Shore Drive podcast, as well as the daily content that comes out from all of our writers here at the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. As always, the show is brought to you by Edgar Snyder Associates. Whether you're injured in a car accident or hurt on the job, Edgar Snyder Associates has helped injury victims for over 40 years recover more than $2 billion on their behalf. If you or a loved one have been seriously injured in an accident, call 1-800-94-EDGAR or visit www.edgarsnyder.com for a free consultation. And remember, there's never a fee unless they get money for you. Ray, let's talk about this Steelers defense. Now, Mike Tomlin highlighted this when we talked to him on Monday for the Monday press conference. He talked about their struggles on third downs. When I asked him, this was the first time all year that the Steelers had given up 100 yards to multiple receivers in a game. In fact, both A.J. Brown and Devonta Smith, I believe they were the fifth and sixth wide receivers all year to even get 100 yards on them in a single game. But when we asked about that, he kind of leaned into the Steelers' struggles on third downs, where they gave up 10 of 17 third downs. It's the most third down conversions they've allowed in a game all season. And I did a film study that kind of broke down some of the ins and outs, whether it's, some of the mismatches that they got caught up in at different points of the game. But Ray, this is an Eagles offense that has a mobile quarterback, an athletic running back, and some athletic receivers. That's what the Steelers are going to be going up against the Ravens this upcoming week. Now, granted, they're used to the Ravens. There's less unfamiliarity there. But is this a problem that you could see bleeding into this game, or do you think that was kind of a one-off and like they'll be able to lock back in against a Ravens team that they're very familiar with?
No, for sure that could bleed into this game because, listen, Jalen Hurts bought time for himself in that football game, and Lamar Jackson is very good at doing that as well. Now, I would argue that, the Ravens receivers aren't as good as A.J. Brown and
I would agree.
Devonta Smith. But, your point is well taken. That is certainly something that the Steelers want to tighten up here before Saturday gets here. And what Mike was talking about, I mean, I sort of get it. It was the volume of the opportunities, and that's the reason that they gave up some of those plays. But the bottom line is, your guys are out there, and there were a lot of times where they were not even close to those receivers. I'm thinking about some of these slants to both Smith and Brown, where they were just wide open. Nobody was even there to get a hand in there before they were able to catch it and run with it. So, yeah, it's an issue. And I think, Chris, as we sit here and talk about the Steelers defense, I still think it's top 5 in the league, if not very, very close. But there are some issues with the secondary that are starting to creep up more and more. Joey Porter, Donte Jackson, James Pierre when he has to play. That's one aspect of this defense where I am a little bit concerned right now.
No, it's certainly reasonable to be concerned about that part of the defense. In fact, that's the only part of the defense that doesn't rank up in the upper part of the NFL right now. The Steelers are top 10 in total yards allowed. They're top 5 in total rushing yards allowed. They're top 6 in total points allowed. But they're outside the top 16 in passing yards. Now, some of that's also when teams are down, they're going to pass a little bit more, and there's some of that there. But I think it is pointing to kind of a weak spot in the defense where cornerback hasn't been as bad as we've seen it been in the Steelers' recent defenses. We've seen some pretty rough years, but it's not up at the level it was like when Joe Hayden and Steven Nelson were playing at their best, and you could kind of count on those guys to be erasers for a lot of games. Joey Porter Jr. and funny enough in the second Hard Knocks episode that they showed on HBO, they showed Mike Tomlin kind of talking to Joey Porter and being like, hey, you're not going to be great today, but you need to work so you can be great tomorrow, and talking about how he needs to get through that. I think that's kind of where Joey Porter's at, but they need to find some answers to help their guys. Because here's the other crazy part, Ray. Like, there were some plays where the Eagles were just in open space. There were plenty of plays where the Steelers were in the right position and they just missed, like Donte Jackson missing on an underneath running back on a third down. Patrick Queen missed on one of those. There was on the touchdown to Devonta Smith, James Pierre, you could see him even point to Devonta Smith saying he's coming this way, and he's there, but he lets him get inside of him, and that opens up for the touchdown. And just miscommunications that early on, funny enough, I went back, I forgot that the Steelers only allowed 1 out of 3 third down conversions to start the game. It was after that point when they started to make more mistakes and the Eagles started to capitalize. I think the Steelers have a clear plan for how they want to handle things, and in fact they looked in position to handle a lot of what the Eagles threw at them on third downs. It was just a lack of execution and some key points, and it dropped the Steelers from being the second best third down defense in the NFL going into last week to now being the 7th best. So that's how many third downs they gave up in this game. I do think that there is a plan there, but I think it's more about, hey, some of these young guys, they're going to have to start stepping up. And I do wonder if we'll get to see Corey Trice soon with the Jackson injury.
Yeah, and listen, Corey Trice wouldn't step into a starter's role, I don't think, unless Donte Jackson doesn't play. I think Jackson is probably trending toward playing. He's been fighting through this back injury for quite some time now. So unless that becomes an issue again this week, I would expect him to play. But, is he a better option than James Pierre? I don't know, maybe. We'll see. There was a reason that they had Corey Trice on their 53-man roster to start the season. So, Chris, I keep going back to this, and Mike Ballman also alluded to this in his news conference the other day. How many times did they have Eagles short of the sticks, players in position to get them on the ground, and they just didn't do it? I mean, it was probably the worst. It was by far the worst tackling performance of this season, but I'm having a hard time going back through my head and trying to remember the last time they tackled so bad in a game. It's been years since they were that bad at trying to get guys on the ground.
And that's why I wonder if this might be a one-off where, like, hey, because Mike Tomlin pointed, they were trying to put a lot of effort into stopping Saquon Barkley, and they did that. But then when it came to other guys, they flat out missed in certain points. And again, it wasn't like they had no idea where to be in a lot of points. There were a lot of times you could see them saying, hey, we got to be there, but they missed on these opportunities. And if you look back at this game, and if you get a few of those third down stops that stop the Eagles before they can get into some of those touchdown drives, if Najee Harris doesn't fumble, and maybe the punch, the penalty on them getting punched in the face doesn't get that doesn't not get called against the Eagles when it was very clear. And we're going to talk about the replay assist in a minute here. I could see this game swinging the other way if they are able to win those momentum moments. And again, it's not asking for them to do things out of their control. The Steelers have been a good tackling team this year. Najee Harris has been a sure-handed running back this year. He hasn't fumbled a whole lot. So I look at that and I think, man, the Steelers, I think from this Eagles game can certainly take away a lot of lessons, but I don't think that this is a sign that they're about to fall off like we've seen in past years where they were an older team and they had kind of played up to their potential. I think this is a younger team that's still working on figuring out just how high their potential is.
Yeah, I would agree. And, I think, we're talking about the secondary, but how many of those plays were on Patrick Queen too, right? Patrick said yesterday he'd like to have at least 2 of those plays back. So it was sometimes, things just snowball on you and, one guy plays bad and then it gets in your head and other guys, couldn't perform either. So, yeah, maybe I'm with you with a one-off, maybe just a one-time deal. But, Joey's problems go back a couple of games now. We talked about this the other day. He had a chance to make a game-changing play and get an interception. And, he just couldn't. He couldn't, bring it in to give the offense the ball back. So just one of those days, hopefully for the Steelers' sake, it doesn't happen again on Saturday in Baltimore.
Certainly, we'll talk more about that matchup here in a bit, but I want to talk about replay assist because Ray, you wrote a piece about that for the Post-Gazette. I want to talk about things that you saw and what needs to change, if anything, on the NFL side of things. We'll do that next here on the North Shore Drive podcast from the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. But first, I want to remind you, this show is brought to you by Edgar Snyder Associates. If you're injured in an accident, you're probably wondering what's next. Well, for over 40 years, Edgar Snyder Associates has helped injury victims answer that very question. Whether it's gathering evidence, collecting medical records, or dealing with the insurance companies, Edgar Snyder Associates has helped over 75,000 people handle the what's next question. Call 1-800-94-EDGAR or visit www.edgarsnyder.com for a free consultation. Remember, there's never a fee unless they get money for you. Back here on the North Shore Drive podcast from the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, Chris Carter, Ray Fittipaldo. Ray, you wrote an analysis piece in the Post-Gazette on Tuesday. The whole week's jumbled up when they move up the game a day. I'm like, is Wednesday Thursday or is Thursday Friday? I don't know. But you wrote a piece on Tuesday that said, upon further review, the NFL replay assist has been a massive failure. Now, NFL went to replay assist a few times in this game. Once overturned a Steelers reception. Another time, looked at what happened on a scuffle between the Steelers and the Eagles in the end zone, and then another time on a head slap on a punt. On a punt where the Steelers were given a penalty before the punt, and it was flipped to being after the punt. And the catch, I thought the catch overturn, I thought was legit. The ball did hit the ground there, but in the fight, and I think this got highlighted on the third episode of Hard Knocks of the AFC North, where they played the explanation from the officials when they talked to Mike Tomlin after Darnell Washington and Calvin Austin got penalized, but no Eagles did. And there's clear video evidence that there were multiple punches thrown by the Eagles side in that fracas. The referee said, "Oh, he wasn't throwing punches; he was knocking his hands off of him." And I'm like, I don't know if you punch someone in the face to knock their hands off here. But Ray, what are some of the things that you've seen? Just because you also brought up pass calls and just how replays. What are some of the things that you've seen about how the NFL's use this?
Yeah, I mean, there's been all kinds of issues. I mean, the spotting of the ball is a big thing. Mike Tomlin and Arthur Smith have talked about that. It might seem like a small detail, but when you move the ball 2 yards and you have the ball and you're trying to call plays, it definitely impacts your personnel packages and the play call that you want to have out there. So that's one aspect of it. But to me, Chris, the throwing the punches things, I mean, it just tells me that they have unqualified people in New York or at the stadium reviewing these things. And this goes back, to something that's been happening for the last 5 or 10 years. The best officials are going to television. You got the best officials who are taking jobs at CBS, ESPN, Fox, Amazon, whoever. They all want these rules analysts, and they're not replacing them with quality people. So, if you're sitting in New York and you said that Darius Slay was trying to extricate himself from Darnell Washington, then I don't know what to tell you. I mean, it's wrong. The Steelers were penalized. At the very least, Chris, it should have been offsetting penalty. Steelers got the ball on the 4. I mean, I just don't know what to say about that. It's been a big issue all season, and I think we saw it highlighted on Sunday in Philadelphia. It's just not working, and players feel the same way. I talked to Cam Hayward about it yesterday. Players are frustrated with the rule as well.
And I think it's also kind of because it wasn't like just Darius Slay threw punches. There were other Eagles who came in and threw punches, and did more so than Calvin Austin did, who also got flagged on the play. And so to me, I think that's the other problem with this is that, if that's the explanation about one guy, what's the explanation about another? You look at that, and then again, you look at the Jalen Carter personal foul penalty where he slapped Connor Hayward in the head on a punt, where you can see live and on replay, he does it before the ball is punted on the field. The officials call and say that happened before the punt. It's now Steelers ball, 15 yards moved up, and it was going to keep the Steelers in the game. And then the NFL calls in from New York and says, no, wait, it happened after the punt. It's actually Eagles ball here. And like, I don't know how you do that when I'm able to see on TV, it's clear as day, head slap, and you see the ball get punted after that. It's just things like that. Like you said, it's incompetence, gross incompetence. And it makes you wonder, what are the resources the NFL are putting into officiating, not just on the field officiating, but the people who handle things in New York.
That's the problem. And I'm trying to look up an email from one of my sources here. You're absolutely correct about Jalen Carter. The ball, that was not a post play foul. That was still when the play was going on. The Steelers should have retained possession there. But my understanding, based on some of my sources within the officiating world, if you throw a punch, that's a penalty. There is some discretion involved there in terms of disqualification. Like, they could say, oh, well, he was trying to, get himself away. He was tangled up, and that's fine. You don't have to eject somebody. But if you throw a punch and you land a punch, Chris, that's an automatic penalty. So replay assist, if that's what they're telling Mike Tomlin, and I didn't see Hard Knocks last night, but you obviously did. If that's the case, replay assist and the people in New York don't know the rules. And I said that Sunday night. These officials do not know the rules. They're constantly having to go to New York for clarification. But now even the people in New York don't know the rules. I mean, I don't know what we're doing here.
It makes you wonder, like, if this is becoming a fly by the seat of your pants type of job. Like, you come in and you fly. Because listen, we know that a lot of these officials, they have other full-time jobs. They're flown into these spots there. This isn't their thing. Why shouldn't the NFL have guys fully dedicated? This is all they do there, and be much more on point than this. And if they are, this is all that they do, and they're still making these mistakes, that says maybe they need to hire better people at their jobs. But and again, I think it's been just thing after thing after thing all season long, and not just with the Steelers. It's not like the Steelers have been, especially egregious here. Even though I think they've faced several, just unexplainable decisions and calls from officials this year. But across the league, I watch a lot of football. I watch when the Steelers go off, I'm looking at the 4:00 games, or I'm looking at the Sunday night games, the Monday night games. I'm looking at where other teams are and how they're performing to get a sense of where the league's going. And there's so many times I'm just like baffled. How do you not call this live, or how do you not call in with the replay assist on this play to make things happen? It just seems to be a consistent thing that's always brought up. And it's one thing for judgmental calls that are just really, really tough to determine. Like, did he get that toe down? Maybe you think he did. I think he didn't. But these are clear things that are just objectively determinable, and they're being gotten wrong. And it feels like they're being gotten wrong at a very high rate. Yeah,
let me just read to you from my source what he said about the punches, okay? So this is in terms of being ejected, okay?
Okay.
There is discretion, but certainly if a punch is thrown, that could result in a disqualification. And there is judgment there as well. For example, are there any mitigating factors, like a player trying to untangle from a scrum versus a second act that is separate and distinct from the initial contact? Okay. So, but that has nothing to do with, a punch. When was the last time you watched an NFL game and there were punches thrown and there wasn't a penalty flag?
It's been a while.
That's an automatic right there, because when the NFL purportedly, supposedly, is trying to take, they're trying to have a positive stance on head injuries as well, not to mention, fights breaking out and how that might be unappealing to a portion of the fan base. So, I get it. There's discretion, there's judgment involved with players throwing punches in terms of, do we want to eject them or not? But there's no gray area there. If you're throwing punches in a football game, there's an automatic flag that comes with that.
Yeah, and like you said, disqualification, another thing. But flags absolutely should be every time, and it makes no sense that there wasn't when there was clear video evidence on the broadcast, after the broadcast, everywhere, that there were multiple. And again, it wasn't just one guy; it was multiple dudes on the Eagles that committed those penalties. So we'll see if anything changes. I doubt it. The NFL seems to be very content with how they've handled that situation. I wonder if it'll take a big moment in a big game on a bigger stage, as you allude to in your story. If they don't change this, if they don't get better at this, this is going to come up in a big game, in a big moment, and then it's going to have one of those, Saints Rams playoff games where there was a clear missed offensive pass interference penalty or defensive pass interference penalty, that everyone's going to be like, well, we got to change all the rules. And all of a sudden the NFL is going to be backpedaling. They need to, for once, be proactive, get in front of some of this stuff and just get better at their jobs here. But the Steelers also need to get better after this loss. We'll see if they can get better personnel wise. We'll talk about what we're looking for the rest of the week in practice, including injury updates on some key players. That's next here on the North Shore Drive podcast from the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. But first, we'll remind you the show is also brought to you by Savinas, Kane, and Gallucci, the UMass Leoma and asbestos lawyers with over 85 years of experience. Call them today for a free consultation. That's Savinas, Kane, and Gallucci. We're also brought to you by Moon Township Honda, where you can visit and get your new Honda vehicle at 5802 University Boulevard in Moon Township, Pennsylvania, or go to their website, moonhonda.com. Here's a message from our friends at Moon Township Honda.
It's that time of year again to get the Honda of your dreams during Happy Honda Days, where you'll find great offers on a sporty new Civic, spirited Accord, fun to drive HRV, and versatile CRV. So don't wait. Turn your holiday dreams into reality with a new Honda named KBB.com's best value brand. Buy online, reserve from select dealers, or visit your local Honda dealer today.
We're back here in the North Shore Drive podcast from the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. Chris Carter, Ray Fittipaldo. Ray, the Steelers got plenty of injuries to watch out for this week. We've talked about them, going into this episode. But, of course, chief among them, T.J. Watt injured late in the game. Mike Tomlin did say during his Monday press conference that, hey, it looks a little bit, he saw him walking around. He said he's not out this week. They're going to be able to judge things, which, the way that TJ Watt left that game, you thought maybe on camera, like, ooh, that's really bad. But then I thought he sounded more confident than I expected in the Steelers locker room after the game. And then at the facility, at least you get that good word from Mike Tomlin. Tuesday's practice was a walkthrough, so whenever you see do not practice, it's more of an estimation of how they think things are gonna go. But is this a situation where you do think, where you have any feel for it? Is this they try to protect TJ Watt, or do you think that he actually could be coming back to play this week?
Yeah, I mean, I saw TJ in the locker room on Tuesday, Chris, and there was no limp involved there. So, I mean, I know it's different walking than running and planting. And, the big thing with TJ, of course, is his get off. That's what makes him such a great player. So, I don't want to read too much, into that. I think we all realize, Thursday is the day we have to watch for with all these guys. It's a short week. I don't know that Wednesday's practice is going to be any more intense than the walkthrough on Tuesday. So, Thursday we should have a pretty good idea on a lot of these guys, including TJ. But it's interesting, Chris. I wrote something that published Wednesday morning on postgazette.com. Even if the Steelers lose to the Ravens on Saturday, they control their own fate for the AFC North. So
yeah, it's crazy.
All they would have to do is beat the Chiefs and Bengals, and they would still get that home playoff game and be a top 4 seed in the AFC. So, I know what Mike said on Tuesday. It's the chance to win. Everyone who's healthy is going to play. But you got to imagine if there's any doubt about a guy's effectiveness or whether an injury could get worse, you should probably leave him out of this game and see if it's any better in 4 days. I don't know if it would be for Christmas Day. That's the other side of this that, the NFL
quick turnaround.
Yeah, putting these 4 teams up against. I mean, it's a terrible situation. It's a money grab. With the TV networks, it's awful. This is, the product we're going to see on Christmas Day and on Saturday. It's, who wants to see that? Who wants to see a hobbled Patrick Mahomes, right? You want to see these players at their best. And, I don't know, that's a topic for another day. But, I think we'll have a better idea on Thursday. But I am, like Mike Tomlin said, I'm leaving the door open for TJ to play based on what I saw yesterday.
And now I think also if there was ever a time for the Steelers to have to. The Steelers, I believe, are 1-10 when they don't have TJ Watt in a game. If there was ever a time that the Steelers were best suited to handle it, in this, I think that in the tenure of when TJ Watt has been a superstar, this might be the year when you got Alex Highsmith, you brought in Preston Smith, and Nick Herbig's playing as well as he is. Now, that's not saying that they don't need TJ Watt for this game, because I think they do. This Ravens team's still pretty doggone good. I know that Steelers fans have probably been like, they beat them all the time now because they've won 8 out of the last 9, but that is still a very good team across from you, and you've been winning a lot of these games by the skin of your teeth. It's just that you've won them that way consistently, but TJ Watt plays a huge factor into those, even in the games where he doesn't get the biggest stats. So getting him back this week would be huge for the Steelers against a really good team like the Ravens. But the other big name that we're looking at, Ray Fittipaldo, is George Pickens. And he was a guy that we saw a video of, being put out there that he was able to work out at practice yesterday. Now, he was given a did not practice participation moniker in the injury report, because again, it was a walkthrough, it wasn't everything. But I do wonder if maybe, Mike Tomlin didn't close the door on that either. I do wonder if there is a chance for George Pickens to return this week and what that could do for the offense.
Yeah, I do think there's a difference between a low ankle sprain and a grade 2 hamstring, where
there is.
When you have to full out sprint, it's different from what they were doing at practice with George and the trainers yesterday. So what I saw was good to see. I mean, I'm not going to deny that. It seems like George is making good progress, but I didn't see him sprinting out there trying to jump over a cornerback to make a catch. Those are different things that we're going to have to see for our own eyes before Saturday if we want to determine if he's going to play.
Absolutely. There's several factors that need to go in there. And like you said, like with TJ Watt, he may be able to jog and look fine to us and as normal people, but there's a reason why these guys are world-class athletes, and there's parts of their job that they have to do that, we're not going to think like, oh, that's how much force gets pushed down on that lower ankle that is now injured here. And that's how he does his job at an elite level. So there's that guy there, but there's also other guys in the injury consideration. You brought up Donte Jackson, DeShawn Elliott, another guy that Mike Tomlin wouldn't close the book on, and Larry Ogunjobi. This feels like a big week to get a lot of key role players back on the defense on top of TJ Watt. It's such a good offense in the Ravens.
Yeah, and we didn't mention this in the first segment, but if you're going to get one guy back who would help, and I don't have a great feel for whether he's going to play or not, but DeShawn Elliott's probably their surest tackler in the secondary, probably along with Minkah, right? And boy, could they have used him against the Eagles. We'll see if he's able to play against the Ravens, but that certainly would help as well.
Exactly. I think that's where I think that you hope, if you're the Steelers, that you can get back these guys, but you also have to have plans to handle those situations, right? I think that they have a system in place to deal with Lamar Jackson, but that system also depends on, the Jimmies and the Joes, the guys on you. We could talk about X's and O's all we want, but if the Jimmies and the Joes ain't right, you're still going to lose. And I think that's where the Steelers, they have been able to win with the X's and O's against the Ravens, but they've also been very healthy in a lot of those games, having key defenders ready for those games. I also think it's going to, be a combination of things. You remember the last time the Steelers beat the Ravens, they beat them with 6 field goals. There were a lot of those red zone struggles that Russell Wilson talked about. This is their chance, especially after only scoring 13 points last week, granted on limited opportunities, so they didn't get too many possessions. But this is their chance to come back and say, okay, yeah, that wasn't us when we played that like that against the Ravens. We can be a team that finishes drives more often. That's something that has to happen in this game, especially if the defense is going to be missing some key players, and something that's going to be something that they have to adjust to in this game throughout.
Yeah, absolutely. This is, I know what I said about them having a chance to win the division, Chris, even if they lose on Saturday, but if you're a player, don't you want to go out there, earn it on the field, and then also, be able to put on those T-shirts after a win? I mean, they clinched when they lost on Sunday. I think they want to do it the right way. They want to go down to Baltimore and do it. And if they can play Lamar Jackson the way they've always played him, I think they're going to have a good shot.
I think I think we'll get to see that this Saturday in Baltimore, M&T Bank Stadium. You guys will be there on the case. And crazy enough, as you pointed out, if the Steelers win or lose this game, they control their destiny. But either way, the 2 games after this are at home before the playoffs, and they are guaranteed a playoff game. So the Steelers are in position to do some good things. We'll keep you covered on if they pull it off and how they handle it down the home stretch here of the regular season here on the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, post-gazette.com for all our written work. Check out the North Shore Drive podcast here on your favorite podcasting apps and on YouTube. Like this video if you enjoy it. Subscribe to this channel to get all of these Monday, Wednesday, Friday episodes, as well as the daily content that comes out from all of our sports writers here at the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. Reminder, you can read Ray Fittipaldo's analysis of what's been wrong with replay assist in the NFL at the Post-Gazette, and also my recently released Steelers film room where I break down some of that third down defense we were talking about earlier in the show. We're back here on Friday with more on the Pittsburgh Steelers, getting you ready for Steelers Ravens on Saturday. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of the North Shore Drive podcast from the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. If you watch this video on YouTube, please like the video and subscribe to our channel. For all the sports coverage from the Post-Gazette that we have to offer, visit post-gazette.com.